if I could share my slides, I'm going to do more than share the slides. I am going to echo capture what I say and point at today. So there will be a video recording of what I say, so that if there's something that you missed or you want to share this with a friend because you found it very funny that I was standing up here with a big bruise on my forehead or something, then this will allow you to help other people laugh at me. I am Dr. Douglas Rhoads. I am a professor here in biological sciences. I came here in 1990, so that's probably before most of you were born. I'm originally from Kansas. I got my PhD at Kansas State University and then came down here after a postdoc also at Kansas State University. And I was originally hired by the Department of Zoology, which 3 months later became the Department of Biological Sciences when it merged with botany and microbiology. Since that time, I have been instrumental in creating a new graduate program. We did that in the early 1990s, and so I am now the director of the graduate program in cell and molecular biology. So some of what I talk about today will have to do with research, how to get into a research lab. Some of it has bearing also on graduate programs, and so I would love to answer any of your questions. So please, if there's something as we go through, don't feel this as a formal lecture or anything. I am here to hopefully share information with you, so when you have questions, I'm sure other people will have the same question, so don't feel inhibited to raise your hand. Make sure that you've swallowed your pizza before you start asking the question so that I can understand. Okay? So, what I want to talk about today are primarily related to undergraduate research, some of the learning experiences that you can encounter, how many hours you should expect to commit to, how to find a project and a research mentor, what do you have to know before, what does it do for you, and then at the end, what to expect when it comes to writing and defending a thesis. I'm primarily focusing this on honors research because we have a large honors program, especially within biological sciences, but most of what I say also would apply to those of you that maybe aren't in the honors program but still want to do a senior thesis that's research-based. There's a whole other side of senior thesis or the senior writing requirement if you're not going to do it in research. So, what would you learn from doing a senior research project as an undergraduate? Most of what you would learn in a lot of the areas that I'm familiar with, which is the microbiology and molecular biology side, would include lots of different techniques, everything from DNA isolation, how to culture bacteria, how to do PCR, because it's kind of hard to do any molecular biology that doesn't involve some sort of polymerase chain reaction now. How to do gel electrophoresis. There's a fair amount of computer work, bioinformatics, statistics, and some of you might get involved in something where you're trying to clone a particular gene. What particular expertise you will gain is highly dependent on who you choose as your mentor. And we'll cover how you choose your mentor and how that comes together in a slide or two. Probably the most important thing is that you're going to have to learn whether you can handle research frustration. And I think I have a little animation for how research can be conducted, because nothing that you do in a research lab is like the level of frustration that you might have experienced in an inorganic chemistry lab or a general microbiology lab or cell biology or general genetics. For those, we give you a protocol that other students have gotten to work. It's supposed to work 90% of the time, if not 100% of the time, but depending on whether you're all thumbs, whether it's just a bad week, or the TA didn't prep something correctly, sometimes those experiments don't work. But they're a lot like making a cake. You go, you buy the box, you read it, you follow the instructions, and you're really supposed to get a cake when you're done. When you go into the research lab, they're going to be giving you a project that the techniques all work, but you're going to be asking a question that no one has ever asked before. It's not like a Betty Crocker cake mix anymore. You're going to be asking a question, and for example, using my own lab, I have now 4 undergraduates doing research projects in my lab. 3 of them are doing PCR, and every once in a while the PCRs just stop working. And the question is, why is it not working? I did everything the same way. But sometimes a reagent goes bad, sometimes you're doing something that's not really in the protocol, and sometimes you're given a technique that should work on something, but it just isn't working, and there's no set formula for figuring out why it's not working. You have to debug the process. I use it as an example. When I started my PhD, another graduate student and I were given a set of reagents, a project that was supposed to work, and after a year and a half, and both of our degrees depended on this, a year and a half later it still wasn't working. And my PhD advisor said, I'm going to Israel, I'm going to be back in 2 months. If you haven't got this working, then you're both done. 2 months later, we had it working. Actually, it was within a month. So that can be very frustrating, and for some of you, you will find that exhilarating, solving a problem. For others, you'll just say, this isn't really what I want to do. So I'm just warning you up front, there is no guarantee of success, but who you choose as a mentor is going to be part of how much guidance you get, how much time they are around. And so when you get to that point of deciding whether this is the lab that you want to be in to work on your senior project, it's very important that you ask other people that are in that lab, is there going to be somebody to help me when I can't get something to work? Find out how much help you're going to get. Are you going to get to see the professor very often? Because a lot of us have a lot of other things that we have to do. And you notice I didn't bring a representative of my lab to tell you how little I'm around. Any questions so far? I know it can seem daunting. So, how much do you have to commit in order to move forward towards getting into a research project, getting into a research lab? Well, some of that depends on what you want out of this. For those of you that are honor students, your interest may be, what's my final level of honors going to be? And the level of honors is not just determined by your research project. You're going to write a thesis, you're going to defend that thesis, the committee is going to evaluate you, but then that recommendation goes forward to another committee which takes a look at whether you took H2P, how many honors credits did you have, what's your overall GPA, and so your senior project only becomes a component of that. But it is a pretty important component because the committee is going to judge you and turn in an evaluation as to whether you pretty much just did a regular old project that was guaranteed for success and there was nothing really exciting about it, to something that could be presented at a national meeting, to something that's ready for publication in the scientific literature. And that is certainly possible if you get in on the right project and you exert yourself. It is possible for you to generate a thesis which is worthy of publishing. I've had students in my lab that have published, say, in the journal Inquiry, which is something the University of Arkansas produces. That is a publication. And I've had other students who were first author on a publication in an international journal. For those of you going to medical school or going to a outstanding graduate program, those publications mean an awful lot. Because I've had certain students who really wanted to go to Harvard, but if you want to go to Harvard in their graduate program and you don't have a publication, they pretty much don't listen to you. Okay? But 9 times out of 10, most of you are going to be more concerned with, am I going to be cum laude, magna cum laude, or summa cum laude? And the quality of your research and the thesis that you write up will be a major component in that. So, depending on your level of commitment and what you want out of it, you could range from a few hours per week to 10 or more hours per week in the lab. Now, that's not so bad, because usually when you join a lab, you join it 24/7 for the whole year. By joining, I mean you're a member of that lab. There's a computer that you can go in and use. There's a desk. You can go in, you can use it for study. You can use it for taking breaks, checking email. And there's other students that you can interact with and study with. So it becomes a home here on campus. And that certainly is convenient, especially if you're taking lots of classes in and around here. If you're working in a lab in Farragut Hall, you can go there. You've got a place to keep your lunch and a refrigerator, and a place to hang out in between classes. Early on, this isn't going to be as important, but as you go through your research project, it will be important for you to work out with your research advisor, your faculty mentor, a good schedule where the two of you can overlap in the lab, where it's nice if you can have a couple days a week where you can commit 4 to 5 to 6 hours in the lab. Get all your courses, your lecture courses, say on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday afternoon, so that Tuesday morning and Thursday all day you can commit to doing research. Because most of the time the experiments require that you go in, you get the reagents out. It takes you about a half hour to get everything thawed out, mix it up, put it into the PCR machine, and then you got nothing to do for an hour, hour and a half. But when the machine's done, you got to get the samples out, you got to have the gel ready, put the samples on a gel. The gel's going to take 2 hours to run, and then somebody's got to photograph it. So it's kind of, you can work that around some classes, but it's really nice if you have a 4 to 6 hour block, even just 1 day a week to commit. And there's ways of working that in, I'll cover in a few minutes. Incentives. So, as I said, it requires a commitment of several hours, but you can schedule some of it around classes. So if you've got a 10:30 Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you could come in at 9 o'clock and get something set up. And for most of these experiments, it can sit in the PCR machine when it's done for a couple of hours or overnight. Make sense? So, probably the biggest problem is how to decide and how to get into a research group, into a lab. For those of you that are interested in the microbiology, molecular biology area, we have a number of faculty, about 12, that are in that area, that are in biological sciences. But we have, I haven't looked lately, it's probably 350 honor students in biological sciences. And if we have 30 faculty, 31 faculty right now, and you do the math, that's about 10 honor students per faculty member. And I don't know very many faculty members that have more than 4 or 5 honor students doing research projects. So what are the rest of us supposed to do? Well, as I mentioned, I'm the director of the Cell and Molecular Biology program, and we have 94 faculty that are all engaged in microbiology, molecular biology, biomedical research. Everything from hardcore nanotechnology to chasing chickens around the farm. There are 14 different departments, as I mentioned, 94 faculty, sorry. It used to be 95, but one person left. And so there are a lot of other opportunities outside of just biological sciences. And I mention that because a number of honor students who have come to me have gone on to work with people in poultry science, entomology, biochemistry, plant pathology, biomedical engineering. There are a lot of opportunities out there, and a lot of these opportunities are in departments where there's only 40 or 50 undergraduates, majors. We've got 1,200 in biology. So there's a lot of students in biology. We need other opportunities, and so there are a lot of those opportunities. And I would argue that, let's say you're dead set on going to medical school. We don't have a medical school here on this campus. We have very few people that are really doing biomedical research. But almost all the people in cell and molecular biology are doing something that's in the area of molecular biology, cell biology. And anything you learn with them is going to be directly relevant to human medicine. So don't restrict yourself. I will use as one example. We had a graduate student who came here and wanted to work in cancer biology. She ended up doing a PhD working in a plant pathology lab on how plants activate tyrosine kinases in response to bacterial pathogen attack. And when she was done with her PhD, she went off to University of Nebraska, Omaha, to work on cancer biology as it relates to tyrosine kinase activation in cancer. So you can you can work in chickens, you can work in beetles, you can work in plants and learn basic cellular biology that's directly relevant, because if you're still working in living organisms, you're working with proteins, polysaccharides, lipids, and nucleic acids. And you're made up of them, plants are made up of them, bacteria are made up of them. So you can get relevant biomedical experience working in any organism. So don't be so certain, because if you go look here and you say, I want to work on cancer, then we've got really one person. If you want to work in immunology, we've got 2. And there's a line out the door of people wanting to get into those labs. I myself started off, I worked on human pathogenic fungi, then I worked on potatoes, then I worked on Chinese hamster cells, then I worked on humans. I mostly work on chickens now, but I've worked on dogs and tomatoes and fungi, because they all have DNA in them. All right, so the reasons for going over there are the ratios can be improved. There's more opportunities, lots of opportunities, and the competition can be lower. I'm not saying you have to go away or go elsewhere. Just don't be restricted in just looking in biology. I don't know if anybody has ever looked at the chemistry website. Anybody been to the chemistry.uark.edu? There's a picture of an undergraduate doing research in chemistry. She is their poster child for the best and brightest. She was a biology major. Okay? So, what are the downsides? Well, if you're going to work with Gisela Erf over in poultry science, that building's way over there north of the football stadium. So it's not really convenient if all your classes are over here. When it comes to the defense, there is the added issue of your honors defense needs to be chaired by a faculty member in biology. So typically, you have 3 people that you designate for your honors thesis committee. The person that's chairing it, another member of the department, and an outside member. Somebody not in biology. So if you go to work with Billy Hargis out at the Steele's Poultry Health Lab, which is out at the research farm, then you're going to have to find some faculty member in the Department of Biological Sciences that is going to approve that and agree to be the chair of your honors thesis committee. Does everybody follow that? Well, at that point, you're certainly going to have your research mentor on the committee, so you already have an outside member. So then you'd have to find some other faculty member, preferably some other faculty member in biology, to round out the committee, and then there will be a 4th person who is assigned by the Honors Council. So you can't just go to plant pathology and or entomology and Fiona Goggin, do a research project, and then come back and say, I want to defend my honors thesis. You got to have somebody in the department that's working with you. That's usually not a big deal because somebody else is going to do all the work, and then the faculty member in biology gets to take all the credit. So, how many people are freshmen? Fresh people, freshmen. First year, second year. Third year? Fourth year. All right. So, depending on what you want to do, and I'm speaking primarily for the microbiology, molecular biology side, it's far better if you make the commitment and find a research lab before you start your 3rd year, assuming you're going to be done in 4 years. If you're going to take 5 years, then you have to modify the numbers. But for most of the faculty, they want somebody who is ready to start their research the start of their junior year. It's not an absolute, but it is strongly preferred. And I'll explain that in a little bit. Why junior year? So we're looking for that commitment of 2 years. It is possible for some research projects, especially if you find somebody on a weak moment, where they can figure out something you can get done in 1 year. It is possible. Some of that also depends on whether you are a fall and spring only, because if you're going to be around during the summer and only taking maybe 1 summer school class or no summer school class, then that can help tremendously in finding a faculty member who will take you on. As I said, I'll cover why in a little bit, but then how do you find that? You go through the list, you'll go look through the faculty listing in biological sciences. Maybe you're more interested in going to work with Dr. Michelle Evans-White and chasing around in streams and looking at how human pollution or urban environments can really screw up urban streams. A lot of different opportunities. But the first thing is to start sending out some emails, get some faculty that you are going to target, and then to send appropriate emails. What do I mean by appropriate emails? I have two examples. One not so good and one much better. And I'll let you read both of these because there's no point in me reading them to you. So does everybody see the big differences between this one and this one? This one looks like to addressee or other resident. It could be sent to anybody about anything. It doesn't even have the person's name. Dear Doctor. This could have been mass emailed. And the problem is, we are a highly intensive research university. The faculty members that are in this department and the university get lots of emails that look just like this, and they come from everywhere: Nepal, India, China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Africa, South America. We get inundated with these. Over here, at least the person knew who I was, and most importantly, they actually knew what I was working on. This person never mentioned anything about what their real interests were. This one's got a little bit about how many hours have they completed. That's going to help, because now I can say, oh, this person is ready to start their third year. GPA, it is important because before they even respond, they're probably going to look you up in ISIS, save them the trip. Even if your GPA is 3.2, that's not a deal breaker. Some of that just means that you have to be more energetic down here. All of the faculty have, well, all but a few, have research pages where they talk about what's going on in their lab. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm planning on going to medical school and I'm interested in your work on pulmonary hypertension because I'm interested in the disease. This email is much more likely to get a response. This one's much more likely to just go into the trash can. So if you send this email and you get no response, what should you do? Any ideas? Email them again. Because faculty are very busy people, sometimes they put something aside because this is Monday and I just found out I got a faculty meeting, I got a committee meeting, I have 4 advisees that are coming in. Oh, the centrifuge broke in the lab, I got to go take care of that. And that email that they were going to answer moved down. So give them another chance. A week later or so, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, Dr. Rhoads, I sent you an email, maybe you missed it, maybe it got lost. And then just repeat. If they don't answer that, then move on. You don't want to work with that person anyway. If they don't have the decency to reply, that just means they're not going to be around when you need them. Sometimes they're just so overloaded, they haven't got time for even thinking about one more student. Okay? But it's very important, I can't emphasize enough, just the fact that this person was talking about something going on in my lab. Yes?
I have a question. What if, okay, I'm thesis or anything, but I just want to be in research just for like the experience. Is that okay?
It is.
Okay.
But you're going to have to do just a little bit of sales work then to get their attention.
Okay.
So I could use as example, I had a person who had been on the women's swim team for 3 years, and because of an injury couldn't be on the swim team anymore, and really wanted to do an honors research project. And so those were mitigating circumstances that let me take that into account. And so just be honest. For some people, the honors thing's just not going to work out because they can't take the courses. There's nothing wrong with that. Some of it's just going to be dependent on whether you write an email that catches their eye, talks to their research, and you show that you have the energy and drive. Because I don't get any more credit for finishing an honor student than finishing another student. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
So, what sort of things are the faculty members going to be looking at? One is, what are your long-term goals? Now, I know most of the students have a strong interest in professional school, medical school, pharmacy, dental, osteopathy, physician's assistant. If your interest is more in going to graduate school, then put that up front. I hate to tell you this, the pre-med people, you get trumped by somebody who's interested in going to graduate school. If your interests lie in possibly going to graduate school or medical school, put that in there. Now, why would we favor somebody that's going to graduate school? Because we suffer, the United States suffers for not having enough U.S. citizens that want to go to graduate school. So they're an endangered species. The coursework that we would like to see is cell biology, genetics, and possibly inorganic chemistry too. So if you're behind on those, you need to say up front. Because if you're letting cell biology go until the fall of your senior year, then chances are faculty aren't really going to be interested. Because cell biology is a prerequisite for really understanding what you're doing in the lab. So is genetics. The chemistry, maybe not as much. So, what do you get out of this? First of all, laboratory-based learning far exceeds any that you get in your organized laboratories, because you're getting real-world experience. It's not just the same thing that everybody does, automatons. This is really hands-on experience where you get to understand how things work. We hope that for some of you, it becomes life-changing. An example I could use is I had a pre-med student, honor student, who was dead set on going to medical school, that came in, and she actually worked for 3 years in my lab. She published her work in the Journal of Mammalogy. She was first author, but by the time she was done, she was convinced that just practicing medicine was never going to be good enough for her. She got a full paid scholarship to Vanderbilt in the PhD MD program. And she is now an oncology researcher in Pennsylvania, faculty member. So for some of you, we might try and turn you to the dark side of doing research as opposed to just practicing medicine. I say just, I'm not trying to belittle the MDs. But I think my life is very nice because every day in the lab is different. It's not the same broken bones. We aren't doing the same experiments this year that we were doing last year. You can get honors credit, not as much as you used to. They've kind of choked this down a little bit. But for a lot of you where you're looking for how am I going to get those 20 hours of honors credit, you can take up to 6 hours of honors credit in 499 that replace not only honors credit courses, but also they count towards that 4,000 rule, where you got to have 12 hours of 4,000 and above, right? And so you can, and this becomes very nice, especially during your senior year where you're really struggling to find classes that will fit in your schedule because they're all full. General virology filled the first day, so did immunology, then McPath. Well, here's up to 6 hours that you can take that replace lecture courses because you're going to be learning just as much, if not more, for the time you spend in the lab. And then you can also take up to 6 hours in senior thesis. So I just covered 12 hours there that you could take and never have to go listen to a boring lecture or take an exam, and you get a grade for this. Counts towards your GPA. Another big benefit is funding. How many people have heard of SURF? That must be all the sophomores. So we have a statewide, it used to be called the Statewide Undergraduate Research Fellowship. It's now the SURF Fellowship, which I don't understand what SURF, it's Statewide Undergraduate Research Fellowship. But once a year, usually in the fall, and the Honors College organizes this, students, and it's not just for honors students, it's for all students, can submit a research proposal that gets evaluated statewide. I believe it's 50 or 60 of these that are handed out per year. But about half of them come here to the University of Arkansas. They're evaluated statewide. They pay $2,500 to you. And then there's research money for expendables that goes to your mentor. There's also, I think, $600 or $700 in travel so that you can go present at a conference here in the state. We have 2 different conferences in which you can present. So by $2,500 to you, that means you can get it either, and usually these SURFs are fund either 1 semester or 1 year. So you could apply in the fall of your junior year, get an award in January that would pay you $2,500 cash to spend a year working in a lab. You can actually then apply again for the spring of your senior year and hope to get that. If you don't get a SURF, there's still the Honors College grants where you're not competing statewide, it's all internal. There are 2 different submission times for these, one in the spring and one in the fall. Students who don't get a SURF, those are automatically included in that round for the Honors College, and the amount of money is just about the same. These are a little more prestigious. I don't care, $2,500 is $2,500. And you can either choose to get that in monthly payments, semester payments, or just one lump sum. Now I understand there are some people that are on full scholarships where they can't get any more money. Poor guys. So you get laboratory-based learning, you can get credit for the work in the lab. There's money out there. But the research experiences, as I mentioned, can be life-changing. I was going to medical school until my junior year as an undergraduate, where I got into a laboratory. It was a bacteriology lab where there were 12 of us, and the faculty members would come in. He would cover the overall goal. There was a rough protocol we were supposed to follow, and he'd say, do this, I'll be in my office if you need me. Well, when it didn't work, he wasn't in his office. We had to figure it out on our own. It was that figuring out part that convinced me that research, laboratory-based research, was really what I wanted to do. And so I never went to medical school. Get a lot less money in a year now, but I like what I do. Finally, letters of recommendation. I don't care whether you're going to graduate school or medical school or dental school or DO, or whether you're going to go off and get a job in industry, work for a bank. I don't care. There's two types of letters. One are letters from faculty members who had you in a class, and they can say, yes, she came to class and she got a very high B, she got a middle A, she was the 5th best student in a class of 150. There's a letter from somebody who watched you work in a lab alongside graduate students, with undergraduates, could speak to how organized you were, how well you worked in a group, how conscientious you were, how organized your notes were, how good of an honors thesis you wrote, how well you worked independently. That letter is going to mean far more to the pre-med advisory committee, to the medical school. And I can tell you that our undergraduate researchers can compete nationwide. One of my students who came through my lab, he ended up being a Goldwater Fellow, was absolutely convinced he could not compete nationally for the prestigious graduate programs. And I kept telling him, Phil, you're crazy. He got 6 interviews. All 6 of them made him an offer. And he chose Berkeley. And he's just finishing his PhD at Berkeley in molecular biology. So the undergraduate research experiences that you get will prepare you if you're willing to go to graduate school. And you can compete nationally for the big name graduate programs. So why did I say 2 years? Generally speaking, the first semester you're going to spend training. You're not doing any experiments other than, can you get a PCR to work? Can you get DNA out of chicken blood? Can you handle solutions without knocking the bottles over and contaminating? So you will be doing over and over similar things as you gear up, because in my lab, you come in and we train you how to use a pipetter, how to handle the solutions, how to write procedures, where is everything. Then you start doing PCRs. You'll do one PCR on something that everybody can get to work. Then you'll use that PCR maybe on 2 different DNAs, then 5 DNAs, then 10 DNAs. And by the time you get 10 DNAs working reliably day after day, now you're ready to graduate to do 96. That's the sort of protocols that we're working on. So the first semester, we're figuring out, are you all thumbs or just partly thumbs? Can you do experiments reliably, or protocols reliably? Then you spend the spring semester starting to collect data. Then you go away for the summer and you come back the next fall and you go back here because you forgot how to do a PCR. But you pick it up right away so that you then spend the fall collecting more data, and finally somewhere around January or February of your senior year, the professor says, okay, we stop here, you have enough data. And you say, but I haven't finished. Yes, you have. You have an answer. Because nobody ever finishes anything. You're part of an ongoing process, and you're taking it to a stopping point, not the Nobel Prize. Because you've got to stop, you've got to start analyzing your data, and you've got to start writing it up. And everybody says, okay, I'm going to defend the second week of April because you really have to schedule your defense before the 20th or 21st of April. And most students say, well, I'll start writing 1st of March. And forget about spring break. Oh, I'm going to work over spring break. No, you're not. We know better than that. So typically you'll be pushed to get an introduction done sometime in February, early March. Your thesis is going to be about 20, 25, maybe 30 pages, depending on whether you want magna or summa cum laude. Lots of figures. You're going to have a detailed introduction of maybe 6 to 8 pages. You're going to have methods that you used, a results section with figures, discussion of bibliography, and since we don't really have any courses that teach you how to do that, you'll be getting that guidance from your faculty research mentor. Certainly how to do a bibliography and how to cite properly in the introduction so that you're not falling into the trap of improperly attributing data to yourself. I kind of already covered this. You have your mentor, 2 faculty members, 1 from inside the department, 1 from outside. You have the appointed honors rep. Honors defense thesis, or honors thesis defense is only 1 hour long by rule. You can't go more than an hour. You can come on in.
I'm not going to stay.
What?
Well, I'm graduating.
You're going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes doing a PowerPoint presentation to introduce this to your committee. They will then spend about 20 minutes asking questions. You'll get some really strange questions from the honors rep, because that's probably going to be somebody that's from journalism or English, and they haven't got a clue what you did. Heaven forbid that it's a math professor and wants to ask you about the statistics that you did. Then they'll send you out of the room, they'll talk about you a little bit, and then they'll invite you back in to tell you that you passed and that they're going to recommend you for honors, but the final level will be determined by the honors council. So, that's what I had to talk about. Are there questions that I can answer?
The courses that you recommended for doing before you do your research, is that just for the kind of research you do, like molecular biology, or for all of it pretty much?
It's what, as I mentioned, I'm primarily concentrating on the microbiology, molecular biology, and those are what would be considered required courses to understand your research if you're going microbiology, molecular biology. I'm not covering the field biology and ecology because I would just as soon not show how ignorant I can be. I tend to concentrate on the micromolecular because that's where I understand. There are certainly differences in what you need to bring to the table, but if I wanted to pick on Dr. Evans White, if you haven't had organic chemistry too, she's probably not interested either. But she goes out in the field but she looks at metabolite flow through the ecosystem. So you have to understand how do hydroxides and other things interact. What is a complex carbohydrate? You had a question.
If we want to start research fall of our junior year and we're sophomores now, should we start emailing and doing contact immediately?
Absolutely. Excellent question. Thank you for that. If you're a sophomore in your spring year, then there is no reason you shouldn't be emailing faculty now,
Okay.
because you want that commitment that when you come back in the fall, and I'm assuming you're leaving for the summer, which is an assumption,
Yeah.
then you want to be able to come back and hit the ground running. If you come back in September and then you start looking, then you're behind.
Okay.
How many mentors would you recommend emailing? Like if you're just starting,
The more, the merrier.
it's not going to be bad if they're like, "Well, I know you.
You
emailed
would
somebody else."
when I get a lot of applicants for a graduate program, and I tell them, if you don't have 10 on your initial list, then you're really cruising for disaster. Because I hate to quote numbers, but if you email 10 faculty and you get one response, that's pretty good. But now you're down to one person whether they will accept you or not. I probably am a little harsh on the faculty, but
But for just undergrad,
for
or just right now, do the same thing.
it's tough out there just finding a good lab, and it depends on how many other people have contacted and how many students are finishing now, because for some people they'll take, I took 3 students 1 year, and it was tough because they're all 3 finishing this semester. That's one of those things that the faculty member's looking at. I had 4 honor students defended 1 year. I was about to, I lost all my hair. I pulled it all out. It's never grown back.
I live here, I'm from here, and so what if I wanted to could I start research during the summer before?
If you're going to be around during the summer, that is far superior to those that are only around during the fall and spring, because a lot of faculty have very little of a commitment to anything other than their research during the summer. And so that's one of those things that you put in the email up front, that I'm going to be around this summer, because that's going to say I'm really serious about this, and the faculty member is not going to feel like it's going to be rushed. You had your hand up.
Well, we're talking about the summer and the transition from spring to fall. I was wondering if you might mention our 2 excellent NSF-funded RU programs for over the summer. It's a really good way to get started in research.
Well,
Or at least
I
in
can
some
only
way.
talk about one of them because we only have one.
Yeah, maybe we don't have a cell molecular anymore?
No, NSF chose not to fund it.
Okay, well, then
All right, so there's a couple of things in that area, and I have to say that even though we have one NSF-funded RU here, you guys don't really qualify. You're already here.
I've done it 2 years in a row.
Really?
I go to school here.
Wonder how you got away.
I already had research experience, but
We did have a cell and molecular biology directed NSF-funded REU, but that was targeted only at students from other institutions as part of our Carver program. For those of you that are from Little Rock, and I think it's too late this year, because but there is a statewide INBRE program. So if you're interested in doing research at the medical school during the summer and you're back in that vicinity, or if you want to do it in Jonesboro if you're over in northeast Arkansas, INBRE is a statewide NIH-funded program that pays you to do research You cannot do an in-bray project here. You can do it at UAMS. You can do it at ASU. So
ERA?
INBRE. So we have in-bray students that come up here from Arkadelphia, from Pine Bluff, from Jonesboro, from Conway. But we can't take you guys here.
Do they have those sorts of programs in other states? Because I'm from Texas, and I can go to university.
I cannot tell you whether there is an in-bray program, but you can look on the NIH website. You could do a search for INBRE Texas on Google and see what you find. If you're going back to other states, you might also look at the NSF REU website. And generally, you're going to be interested in the bio program. So these programs, you apply. Usually applications are due 1st of March. They are only for students who have not graduated. So if you're you could apply for next summer if you're not graduating until the following summer. Each of these programs is designed by a department, funded by the federal government, and the experiences will be different, the requirements will be different. Because we have to specify up front who we will and will not take. So Dr. Michelle Evans-White is running the newly funded NSF REU in ecosystems ecology. There's a lot of going out in boats and testing water and everything else. So, and it's my understanding that they take up to 20 students a year. Typically, they will pay, get this number right. The students that were in my program, it was a 10-week program here on campus. We put you up in the dorm, we give you a meal plan, and we pay you $5,000. So you don't really have any expenses, and you get to walk out with cash in your pocket. Different REUs will have slightly different amounts. So you can start looking around at those. There are about 1,000 of these REUs funded across the United States. I wish there was one in cell and molecular biology, but there has to be a few losers. Actually, there's a lot of losers. About 5,000 applications and only 1,000 get funded. We did have one. We'll have one again next year. Excellent question, though.
I have a flyer for this one up on the bulletin board. If you guys want to look at it.
There's also there's a Belize trip. So for those of you that are interested in Caribbean tropical studies, there is a Belize volunteer course where a couple of faculty members lead students on a sort of a study abroad to Belize, where you do some volunteer work, helping distressed communities build new water systems, learn about better agricultural systems.
That's good research. They do research or volunteer programs?
There is a fair amount of biology that is taught as part of those. Not so much research, and it's not the kind of thing you'd write up for an honors thesis.
They did do research last summer. I went on the trip, and they did do research last summer, and everyone's getting like their name in the publication from the Belize trip.
But it's not, you can't write it up for an honors
Yeah. Oh
thesis.
no, not for honors, but.
The Organization for Tropical Studies, OTS, they have a great program. It's a semester long. There's one in South Africa that's ecology, and one in Costa Rica that's tropical studies.
The University of Arkansas Department of Biological Sciences is a member of OTS also for Costa Rica.
I went on Global Health last summer, and they were kind of advertising the ecology in South Africa, and you are there for the entire semester, and it's a ton of research, a lot of field work. They go out into the national parks, and it's a great research opportunity.
Another one of those
16 hours.
study abroad type things is a summer trip that Dr. McLaughlin usually organizes to. She's been to Norway and Sweden, I think. You got a question or a statement?
Last year, I was here as well. So we actually went out on the main course in the Lagoon, and we were required about writing some publications about that. So there are some research.
Are there any more questions?
Do non-honor students do thesis? Is that possible?
Yes. So, back up just a little bit. As you all should be aware, all graduates, undergraduates, to get a bachelor's degree must satisfy the senior writing requirement. And there are really 3 ways that you can do that. The first way is by doing a research, or not a research, a thesis article, paper as part of a senior level course, where the faculty member who organizes the course signs off that you have satisfied the senior writing requirement. So for example, in my class, Genomics and Bioinformatics, the students do a bioinformatics project, and if they want that to count towards the senior writing requirement, they have to notify me early in the semester, and they have to write an enhanced introduction and discussion for their bioinformatics project so that I can sign off on them satisfying the senior writing requirement. That's option number 1. And for that, the best way is when you're taking a 4,000 level class, you email the faculty member in advance and ask, can I use this course to satisfy the senior writing requirement? And the answer is either yes or no. The second way that you can satisfy the senior writing requirement is to find a faculty member with which you want to do a senior thesis, which would be sort of a library-based, not book report, but reading research articles and writing up a paper on a topic. Now the difficulty with that is you have to find a faculty member who will take the time with you individually to guide you through all this. And it's not part of really a class. You sign up for 1 hour of Biology 498. And then if they follow the required procedure, then you're supposed to give that paper to the faculty member, and the faculty member has to find 2 other people, 2 other faculty, and they all have to agree on a grade. Nobody does it that way. But it's very hard to find a faculty member who has the free time to commit for another student doing a senior writing requirement. And then the third way is doing a research project in some faculty member's lab, writing it up, and having them sign off. It could be an honors thesis. It does not have to be. Does that answer your question? And the purpose of the senior writing requirement is so that when you leave here, we know that in your field you're capable of writing a technically correct, non-plagiarized, organized, cogent article in some subject in this area. So what satisfies a senior writing requirement in biology is very different than what satisfies it in the English department. Now it is possible to go option 2 if you wrote a paper. Let's say you took some senior level class over in crop soil environmental science, and you wanted to shop that around with faculty members in biology and ask, well, is there anybody here who will sign off? But usually, option 1 is pass, didn't pass. So if you do a senior writing requirement as part of a course, they're not giving you a grade for anything. They're just passing you on the senior writing requirement. You get a grade for the class. Option 2, you're going to get a grade. And option 3, you will actually get grades for 498 and 499, but the thesis defense is pass, didn't pass. I didn't say pass, fail, just pass, didn't pass. All right, so I am going to find a place on my website, and you're going to email me, or you're going to email me so I can share the URL for the audio and slides.
Well, let's thank Dr. Rhoads for taking time out of the schedule to have you with us.
My pleasure.